Brandon Thurston from Wrestlenomics is up next, and we're going to follow Brandon with John Pollock from Post Wrestling.
Delivering on the returns, increasing our margins.
Ratings go down the toilet if I'm not here.
All I do is simply put the math in my favor.
We agree that Brandon and John do good work.
The reason is simple wrestling economics.
I've been told the Netflix numbers. I've been told the metrics a little bit, probably 5 different times. I still don't get it.
There were respectable wrestling journalists who needed answers.
Thank you very much, members of the media. I hope you all go to hell.
How about we pop a number right here, right now?
Whole part of the show, man.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Pollock and Thurston. I am John Pollock, alongside the great economist himself, Brandon Thurston, who is here with us.
Alan Greenspan. Oh.
Yes. The late Alan Greenspan, to now be replaced by Brandon Thurston, who is here with us to make sense of the wrestling economics that we are going to break down over this next hour. So welcome all to the show. We are going to be getting into what is a bit of a lighter week, but there's always stuff to talk about. Some interesting interviews that were conducted over the past week. We've got some discussion about MyAEW. Is it taking over WrestleMania week? We're going to find out about that. Would Tony Khan buy TNA? And what would give him sticker shock? All that and more coming up on today's show. But how are you, Brandon?
I'm fine. I've prepared some hardcore Wrestlenomics for this week. This was a slow news week, and I was wondering what we would talk about, but I got some slides out. I get very excited because for a second it looked like the John Cena theme music lawsuit had been settled, but no, only one of the defendants has been dropped, and it's not WWE or John Cena. I believe it's one of the other music producers. But yes, we're still waiting for, do you want to hear about my week? We're still waiting for the audio files that Vice Chancellor J. Travis Laster has ordered. The public must have access to them. He ordered that, he made that ruling on May 28th. It is now 28 days later, June 25th, and I don't have access to these audio files, but we hope to. Does everybody really want to hear what's got to happen here?
Tell us about what is going to be the mode of distribution that these audio files are going to be transported to you by, and please tell us if there is a fee attached.
I woke up in 1996 today because the Register and Chancery for the court in Delaware said that, okay, we can give you the files. It took us this long to get to this, but I had emailed them yesterday, and they said, oh, actually, we were planning on reaching out to you tomorrow. And I said, great, I appreciate it. And then I got an email today saying, we have the audio files, 3 audio files, by the way. So 3 voice messages total. I would be surprised if they're more than like 2.5 minutes worth of audio here in 3 different audio files. So one of the people who's I think a clerk, or they work for the Register and Chancery, said, we can send you a thumb drive, or you can come to the court and you can sign out a thumb drive. And I said, in not so many words, could you please just email me the files? And in fact, I made a call to an attorney who was responsible for handing over the audio files to the court. And I made sure, like, are these big audio files? Like, and he's like, no. So
we know this is like a 30-second give or take message. Like, I don't care
what the words are that are spoken.
Like, how pristine this audio is, there is no way this thing is cracking a gig.
What is this audio to, by the way? This is Vince McMahon leaving a message for Jeff Stein. This is Ari Emanuel leaving a message for Vince McMahon. I believe 2 of them. So that's what we're waiting for here. This is the merger lawsuit. Some pre-Vince McMahon comeback voice messages where they're, where Ari Emanuel is saying, I'll indemnify you, which he has since denied that he ever indemnified him, but it's saying I'll indemnify you, and I know you're basically going through a lot of legal issues right now, but we'll We'll help you out. I've got lawyers who are Latham lawyers and all the SDNY attorneys who may be investigating you for criminal potential criminal charges, which no charges were ever brought. They're all former Latham, so don't worry. So this is these things of that nature are being said, and this is the audio that we're waiting for that must be transmitted only by a thumb drive for computer security reasons.
And here you are, 28 days later, and still without your audio.
Yes.
What do you make of your legal system and the speed at which this works? I mean, this is a little, like, it does give you like a snapshot of like the slow wheels of justice at work here when it comes to a month you've been waiting to get two voicemails, and I mean, and here we are.
Yes. Is this a movie?
Yes.
28 days later?
Yes.
Okay.
Post-apocalyptic horror film, which you are now the star of in this very long wait that you are involved in.
You know, being involved on a pro se basis in multiple, at least soon to be at least two. I don't know. Being directly involved in legal proceedings. Oh yeah, at least two. Is giving me a lot of faith in the judicial system. If you're cynical about the judicial system, you really shouldn't be. If the truth and the law are on your side, things will probably work out for you. That's different from the legislative branch or the executive branch. The judicial system is largely still functioning as a legal system. As a technology system, maybe not so much.
Well, we do hope that eventually these audio files will be delivered. Maybe they will be hand delivered at your doorstep, potentially. Maybe they'll just have you call Ari Emanuel to re-record the voice message. At this point, why not?
How quickly would he hang up?
You could just cold call him and say, listen, we're not getting this file anytime soon. Could you just read this? I'll send you the script. And I promise you, I can send you the script
based on his deposition, though, he would not remember the nature of his tone, which is why we want these audio files.
Yeah, you're right. That would be hard to replicate. I think he'd also be a little. I think if Brandon Thurston called him in the middle of the night, he might be a little perturbed. Well, this weekend we have 4 major events going on between different companies. So TNA, they laid out their pay-per-view. They're like, we're gonna do like 4 pay-per-views this year. So we're gonna pick out 4 weekends. 4 weekends to grab the attention of the wrestling audience. And wouldn't you know it, they chose this weekend, which so happened to be the same weekend the TNA Slammiversary, that AEW was picking for Forbidden Door. And so momentarily, we had a head-to-head pay-per-view contest on Sunday night. TNA, rightfully so, decided, let's move this to the afternoon. That's probably a better idea. So they were going to go to the afternoon. Not ideal, but they're not going to go against Forbidden Door. Then TNA's own partner, WWE, decides, hey, you know how well those head-to-head battles went with us last year when we put NXT up against AEW shows? We haven't done that in a while. Let's do that again. So now we have 3 shows on Sunday with a free Great American Bash on CW, airing against Forbidden Door right after TNA's $35 pay-per-view that will be airing in the afternoon from Boston. Oh, and by the way, Saturday, we're going to get WWE Night of Champions as it returns to Saudi Arabia. And that is your weekend. And there will be some bloodshed by some of these shows. And I think TNA, I don't think it's going to be a fun weekend for TNA business-wise. That's my bold prediction.
Yeah. How's the attendance doing for Slammiversary?
They're running at the Agganis Arena, which is a venue that they have run, that AEW has run, and I believe at last check that they were at, I think, just around 2,000 tickets distributed. So, I mean, that, I think, can seat around 9. They're, 2,578 as of an hour ago. So they have had, it's one of those TNA increases.
Moose said that they're selling out. They're going to sell out. They're going to fill the venue. I heard Moose said that.
Well, this holds 9,000 people. So if they magically fit 7,000 people wake up on Sunday and decide, hey, let's go to the Agganis Arena, Moose would be proven correct. And I'm sure if he is incorrect, he will post an update on Monday and apologize. Right?
Okay.
That's how those
probably.
predictions work. I mean, the current setup here is listed for 3,100. Can they hit their setup, which somehow has been misconstrued as that's a sellout?
Yeah, we don't want people to think that we're trying to make arenas smaller than they are. That's just the number of seats that have been put on sale.
Well, TNA is in a very precarious state at the moment. They have ousted Tommy Dreamer. They have seen a lot of turnover of various talent. So, and I think if you're looking at this show, even as the most optimistic fan, that hey, here's a show they can come out and have a big show. I just don't imagine there are going to be many eyes on this show with the other available options that particular weekend. And the fact that this is a pay-per-view, that this is going for $35 that they are asking you to spend for this Sunday afternoon event. So it's just
not head-to-head with anything, right?
It's not head-to-head with anything, but it will be right before Great American Bash and Forbidden Door start. This is a 4 p.m. start time for the pay-per-view.
Okay.
How many hours of pro wrestling will you be watching this weekend between these 4 shows, Brandon?
Maybe not any. I don't know. We'll see.
Okay. Yeah. I envy that viewing schedule this weekend.
Do you?
Yeah, I do. I would love to swap places. Just have Brandon sit down and watch a Slammiversary. But yes, that is going down Sunday. WWE returns to Saudi Arabia. This is one of the rare instances where they are just bringing the PLE to Saudi Arabia. They're not doing a corresponding SmackDown or Raw, which has sort of become the pattern for the Saudi Arabia shows where TV piggybacks off of the event. They're just coming in. They're doing the Night of Champions show Saturday, and then they all go to Atlantic City for Monday for a double taping of Raw and SmackDown on Monday.
Yes, and they're going to Saudi Arabia. Now, the war is over, I think, for the 10th time, right? The war...
There's an understanding, a memo of understanding.
This war is it's like winning a title. That's what I've been thinking about whenever I've been seeing the coverage of the ongoing military conflict involving Iran. That it's like you become a 10-time champion, but all that really means is that you lost the title 10 times. And when you live in a world where there's just sort of dilution and the title's being flip-flopped all over the place, it doesn't really mean a lot.
Well, that's one way of looking at the war. For WWE at this point, look, what do these shows mean to you at this point, Brandon? Like, these are shows that I think at this point, this is as baked into the WWE schedule as any others. I think there will be a renewed discussion of this entire deal next year when we get closer to WrestleMania. But by and large, these are everything that would have been intended has played itself out, I think, in terms of the Saudi Arabia show. And I think people are exhausted by the discussion of it all. And that's part and parcel baked into the strategy of what these shows set out to be. And that they have achieved what was set out to be. It almost makes you wonder, like, what the Saudi Arabia view at this point of what they get out of these WWE events.
They get, I think, the further normalization of Saudi Arabia or around the world. This is going to be broadcast, as they always are, globally on a streaming platform, on a
unified platform, more personalization, more customization.
It's $50 million. This is, there's some WrestleManias now that across 2 days have done $50 million, but it's an enormous amount of money in one day. And this time they don't even have to do production for multiple shows. They probably do it in the same venue when they do that, but so that minimizes the expense. But it's just get over it. We've done 8 years of this. Stop complaining.
Do you expect it? It's almost like they are going to get this WrestleMania show, and it becomes like are they looking at this as Like, man, this is $50 million per show. Are these shows worth $50 million to us anymore? Like, we have achieved the normalization aspect of it. Like, if we
for Saudi Arabia, yeah.
Like, they're very incentivized by WWE is incentivized, of course, to continue this. But I'm very curious that once you have a WrestleMania, it's like, do they just look at these shows and it's like, what is, like, there was a big investment in these. Has that investment been, has it played out as they've wanted? And is there still that need for further investment?
It's an interesting question. This is a 10-year deal that started in 2018, so it expires. The pandemic is going to push this off, but it's going to expire sometime around 2028, and maybe they don't need another 10 years worth of it. I think there's, you get to almost Vision 2030 by that time, and maybe they have different priorities and different strategies at that point. It maybe kind of makes sense to invest heavily in sports and in entertainment for a 10-year period, and then maybe you only needed to really do this sprint for a limited period of time. Just 10 years is still a pretty long time, but maybe you only really need to do it for 10 years, and then you can sort of back off from there. We've seen that with Live Golf, but I think Live Golf is more the case of this wasn't a business that was working out for them. Now, granted, this is not a WWE is not a business that Saudi Arabia is invested in like they are invested in Live Golf, right? But it's, so it's just sort of a sunk cost.
Yeah, you look at it as, if you were to be a region that you bring a Super Bowl, like you bring the Super Bowl to your region, and then the follow-up is, well, then we're going to go back to like regular season games. It's almost as though like we have now gotten the big prize. We got what we wanted out of this. It's an interesting assessment that you look at after the fact of like, these are like at a time when it seems like for the first time we're hearing like that, the funding in Saudi Arabia, it's not always going to be this bottomless fortune that they are just going to spend without abandon. There's certainly going to be investment still to be made, but is like, you look at the effects of this 10-year deal, and maybe we're only looking for, the biggest event possible that will attract people to travel to Saudi Arabia, and your rank and file shows, they're not as valuable to us as they were 8 years ago when we really needed this worldwide stamp of approval that WWE was willing to provide to its audience and say, hey, Saudi Arabia is okay.
Maybe you only need one show a year instead of two.
Perhaps. Yeah. But this year they're getting 3 because we had the Royal Rumble, we have this show, and then another one in the fall, presumably. And then we go fast forward to WrestleMania, which I still think they have not announced dates yet for WrestleMania. We still have the actual dates for them to announce for next year. And it makes you wonder when they will really ramp up the WrestleMania promotion, because I have to think there's going to be a heavy component of, incentive for fans to travel to Saudi Arabia. I'm sure that's a big aspect of this, is to get tourists over to Saudi Arabia for next year.
Yeah. Didn't they take a while to announce the date for Royal Rumble? It seems like the Saudi shows in particular, they don't finalize the date until closer to the show than typically.
Well, I mean, in the case of the Royal Rumble, they literally had to build a venue for it. So sometimes...
Not bad for 3 weeks.
I mean, hey, that's, sometimes you just got to snap your fingers. Hey, we forgot. We need a place to do this. So hopefully they will have a venue in place, or at least have one in mind 3 weeks out. So that is all coming up this weekend. And then, of course, there is AEW Forbidden Door, where they will be in San Jose, California for the latest iteration of Forbidden Door, which more and more is becoming, in line with, mainly AEW stories mixed in with a couple of talents from New Japan, Stardom, CMLL. And today was the media call that Tony Khan hosted. Brandon, you were on this call. I was not. I was busy today. How was the questions and answers that you were privy to before we get to your subjects that you brought up near the end?
I don't remember what the other questions were off the top of my head, but the audio We do have the audio. The AEW has not sent us the audio out, but the audio is up on the Wrestlenomics Patreon and Substack. Did any questions stand out to you?
He did confirm the visa issues that they're having surrounding this show that have affected the likes of Beast Mortos, Commander, Hechicero, Gabe Kidd, and Mark Davis as well. So he did categorize it as it's been a difficult planning process for this card because of visa situations that have held up several talents, those ones being specifically noted. It was asked about Jack Perry, who has reportedly not signed a new deal, but Tony Khan all but said they expect Jack Perry to resign and be staying in the fold with the company. There was a question about Bushi Road transferring their shares of New Japan to TV Asahi and Cyber Agent, and I believe Tony Khan's quote was, "That is something to keep an eye on."
What does that mean?
I don't know. That can be interpreted in many different ways. That's something to keep an eye on. I would have been curious to know, were you at all presented with any option of purchasing any or all of New Japan Pro Wrestling? Were you involved in any of the negotiations beforehand? Did you know that Bushi Road was looking to get out?
I think that they were probably not. I think that this news was news to them when these shares were transferred.
I think that's a very likely outcome that occurred with New Japan and how this will affect things moving forward. But he did praise the fact that they are great partners as our CMLL. Great partners.
Who's your worst partner? That should be a question.
Rank the partners. Okay, start now. Talked about going to Puerto Rico. He spoke about potential dual contracts, but then we get to the end and we heard that we're going to go to Brandon Thurston from Wrestlenomics, and Brandon got to ask not about if AEW was profitable. We got that one checked off last time, but this time Brandon asked about another company and potentially being purchased by one Tony Khan.
Hi, Tony. Thanks a lot for taking a question. I was wondering if Anthem Sports and Entertainment were willing to sell TNA, would you have any interest in acquiring it?
At what price, sir?
Let's say $40 million.
No.
Okay. Feel free to place a different bid.
Well, it's if we were looking, I mean, it has value, and it would have to be the right price, and it's a video library that's had a lot of great wrestlers over the years. It's certainly not the top priority for me as an acquisition right now, but and it's not something I've had any serious conversations about. So like a lot of things in life, it could be an interesting purchase if the price was right, but isn't that true of so many things in life? There's a lot of excellent automobiles out there, and I would love to have them in my garage, but it would depend on the price of the car. And a lot of things like that, I think, are like that in life, as you know very well from being a great economist and somebody who studies the business very closely. So at that number, no, absolutely not. But no, it's a good thing to ask about, I guess. Is there anything else you'd want to ask while you have me, Brandon?
Okay, we'll get to part 2 of the Brandon Thurston Inquisition of Tony Khan. I can't remember, especially a business-related question that made that man laugh so much as the idea of spending $40 million on TNA wrestling. I wonder what his price ceiling would be for TNA and how low it would be.
To be clear, where I get this yes. number and this idea from, there's a rumor, I think we'll just call it a rumor, that that the Aspers who own Anthem and ultimately own TNA are interested in possibly selling it, but it has, as the rumor goes from someone who posted this anonymous account on Twitter, but it has toxic debt, to which I say yes. The 3 forms of debt: secured debt, unsecured debt, and toxic debt. Anyway. And the number is something like 30 to 50 or something like that. So the first number that came to mind when you asked me that was, well, how about 40? So more than more than Tony Khan is willing to bid for. There's reports too. I think from Dave, right, that WWE would have much like they did with Evolve and Progress, that they would have the right of first refusal. So if someone did bid on it, WWE would have the ability to match it, presumably.
Yeah, and I mean, this does kind of tie into, like, obviously the question would be, like, what exactly are you buying by buying TNA? And he cites the tape library there. And yes, there is MyAEW, but if you listen to his answers fairly closely, like, I don't know, because Sean Ross Sapp asked him about the idea of buying, like, libraries and such.
Right.
And my interpretation,
PWG and
Lucha Underground,
right,
as like theoretical libraries. And I took his answer to be that, like, I don't get the sense he's library shopping, or at least, like, I just think we know that libraries are, like, they're a nice add-on, but, like, I don't know how much value there necessarily is to a library, and especially if we're talking about millions of dollars, where that's the biggest asset that they would be providing for you.
Right. The DVD era is over. And I think there was, we've probably said this a number of times, I think there was a hot time for video libraries in the new streaming era, which I would call, something around 2013 to maybe 2018 or so. And I think that time has passed, and now we're going to be ever more inundated with content and people competing for our time, and Reed Hastings trying to keep us from sleeping, so that I think the value of those libraries is going to kind of diminish over time, if anything.
Like what was the value of, like, Ring of Honor's library? Like, yes, TNA has much better production than Ring of Honor. I don't know if your fan base is necessarily just, like, they're looking for great wrestling and they're inundated with great wrestling. Has, the Ring of Honor library, is that a compelling reason for people to sign up to Honor Club in any significant volume? It's like, it's the pay-per-views and, to a lesser extent, the weekly TV that is going to drive someone to subscribe to Honor Club. And I think the library is going to be a distant third in terms of that, and how many are going through and watching old stuff and the Age of the Fall from 2007. That was my first reference I pulled out.
Right. And what's Honor Club doing right now in terms of subscribers, which is probably largely driven by the pay-per-view. So hard to parse that and separate the value. But what do we think Honor Club has? 10,000, 12,000 paying subscribers, something like that.
They have adjusted now where it's not as though it's a second paywall to get
now,
the pay-per-views.
Internationally, it's part of MyAEW.
That's right. If you are international, you don't need Honor Club at this time as well. I just look at TNA as something that it's if the idea is anywhere, if you are sniffing in the area of $30 or $40 million, I'm sorry, there's nobody. I should not say nobody, because TNA is like the anomaly of all anomalies, that it's just, there is something about this company that people have a desire to separate their money from their logic and pour into this company, that some millionaire, billionaire would look at TNA, here, take my money. I can turn this ship around. But it's a larger question that we have frequently brought up about Anthem's overall commitment. And if you take this report to be indicative of Anthem being in a sale mode, like, that tells you something right there. There is only so many carrots to dangle in front of TNA, that getting to the promised land, and the last one was a bigger television deal. We heard them for years talk about, we just need a better television deal. You got your better television deal, and we are where we are. And there's, like, what's the next horizon for you to cross over that is going to get you to that quote unquote promised land?
If it really does have debt, I think that's question two. Are you actually buying the debt? My understanding of the Ring of Honor deal is that it did not take on any of the liabilities. AEW didn't, or, Tony with ROH Acquisition Corp, as I understand it's called, did not absorb any of the liabilities as part of that transaction.
For WWE, what would be, like, if they in fact do have the right of first refusal, I think it would be similar in that Like, I don't even know if they would stand in the way. If a Tony Khan was willing to spend some ridiculous figure, I don't know if WWE is stepping in to get into some bidding war over TNA. Like, I look at it from the same thing. I don't know if they're necessarily looking for libraries. If it's talent, these talents will all become available. You can just piecemeal your way and pick off the pieces of whatever talent you would want in your system. It's not like the television contract is like, yeah, we would love to have put AAA onto AMC, but I don't think that's what AMC has a contract with. I don't know what the inherent value of TNA is, and the library to me is not enough of a reason beyond if they got some sweetheart offer to pick that up.
I suppose if you're AEW and if there's a real threat that you're going to lose WBD because it's going to merge with Paramount for, any number of reasons, at least buying TNA would buy you a relationship with AMC, which is a well-distributed cable network. There's that. The other thing that comes to mind here is like, what has the usefulness of the TNA relationship to WWE passed? Like, how much crossover, for one thing?
There's none.
Is there?
There's none at this point. At least in terms of, yes, Stax Lorenzo and Ariana Grace still show up on TNA, but that's one-way traffic. There are not TNA talents coming over to NXT any longer. There's, like, this weekend, perfect example. Like, you have the Great American... WWE is a detriment to Slammiversary this weekend. And, like, they're presenting a free show on television right after this pay-per-view. Like, I don't... Like, I think that ship has sailed, and it's a case where, you had all this crossover, and now the crossover has ended, and your TNA audience is kind of, okay, well, we're just left with the remaining parts. We're not getting these attractions over from WWE anymore. So yeah, to answer your question, like, there's basically no crossover anymore.
So what was the value, if I'm WWE, what was the value of working with TNA to me? As I'm about to say this, like, I wonder if this is too online or like too wrestler brain, but like, was it largely a defensive value? And now the window of that, of TNA taking a shot at being the number 2 company, or being, placed on Wednesday nights head to head with Dynamite so that it could take a chunk out of Dynamite. I mean, that's not what happened, right? They got a new TV deal, and there's more wrestling content on more well-distributed platforms. But in terms of it being this sort of, this number 3 that we're going to boost up to be more competitive with this number 2 to sort of suck the number 2 back down and gain some more distance from it, has that, now that the AMC deal is done, has that opportunity passed for WWE to try to facilitate?
I think so. I think that you have to remember, when the deal began, like, yeah, it was beneficial, obviously, to TNA to latch on to WWE. They certainly got some shine off of this association. It also did boost some NXT numbers by going back and forth. Like, it did give NXT a bit of a shot in the arm too. I don't think that was their be-all, end-all, but it was a nice byproduct of this association. Like, it certainly, like, optics-wise, it's WWE playing nice, but I think the longer game was it was positioning TNA as the real number 2, as this surging brand. And I think the end game was that, similar to how NXT was originally positioned when it moved to the USA, was getting Impact into a position where it could ward off AEW, and we could associate AEW as being in competition with TNA. But that's not how things worked out. AMC did not want to put Impact on a different night, and that was smart. Like, how much of this was trying to get Impact onto a Wednesday night, for instance? Like, was that part of WWE's hope of what this deal would be, and that you would create this discussion where it's no longer WWE and AEW, it's our little cousin TNA that is duking it out with AEW on Wednesday nights, and that becomes the focus, and WWE is so far ahead of these sub-brands.
I can't see W ever thinking about a competitor, though, right? Blinders.
That's right. What about sleep?
Texting, sleep, TikTok.
Out of office replies.
Office replies. But I think, that the WWE's position is, I think they are they're paying a decent amount of attention to AEW, as they should. And the only smart, if even dishonest strategy is to pretend that they don't.
But their actions are the opposite. Like, we're going back to this head-to-head thing on Sunday. And unlike previous times when we would discuss, like, man, is this going to hurt the AEW pay-per-view? Like, I just don't see it. I think we learned a lot last year. And granted, those NXT shows were on Peacock. They're now on CW. It is a larger window, but it's a different night for NXT. It's a different start time. It's and it's just it's not that captivating of a show on paper that I think those that were planning to buy Forbidden Door, they're not going to be swayed by an alternative program being on in competition to it. I think that I don't have any belief that AEW is going to do a lesser number with or without this Great American Bash going against it. But I think in many ways it could backfire on NXT that this is your first show of this new deal on CW. And I could very well see it harming Great American Bash when you've got this big pay-per-view that you're up against. And it feels as though like this is a show that it's not going to maximize its audience by placing it on this very busy night where you are going against your competitor.
I do wonder to what degree that the NBCU relationship was stressed by things like what Saturday Night's Main Event going against All In last year.
Saturday Night's Main Event ended up being the last one on NBC as a result.
Not on NBC anymore. And I'm sure that a lot of that had to do just with the ratings of it that may have performed that way regardless. But if you're at NBC, are you wondering like why are you positioning this? Because it seemed like a WWE decision, right, to put this show on this night and to put it right up against AEW. So that's something that hardly gets talked about. I guess that Saturday Night's Main Event was on broadcast network TV on one of the
with
top
Goldberg's retirement. Like there was this was not just some throwaway Saturday Night's Main Event. You had a big attraction. It's Goldberg in Atlanta for his retirement. I absolutely believe that All in Texas bit something out of that audience. And if that number was the deciding factor, it absolutely bit them by opting to go against that. When they put WrestlePalooza up against All Out, and All Out moved to the afternoon, like that was the launch on ESPN. Like I just think it's several of these. Like we're just establishing ourselves on these new platforms. Whether it's one of the first. We're just establishing this return to NBC on network television. It's our first show on ESPN. It's our first show on CW. And we're creating a barrier for ourselves to maximize the audience because we have this desire to still counter program, even though competitors don't exist. And I think it's hurt WWE much more. Like there are no signs that these head-to-head battles have harmed AEW's audience in the process, that they have come out of this. And to the point that I think Sunday showed, like nobody is talking about this from the standpoint of how could this harm AEW. It's the opposite of where is NXT positioned as this sacrificial lamb in this larger war that they're still competing.
And plenty of NXT shows that were on Peacock also went head to head with AEW shows. Those NXT shows, the PLE shows, are no longer on Peacock, now on CW. So like I wonder if part of the attraction of working with TNA is to say, all right, maybe if our partners have a problem with that, well, let's find somebody else to do that dirty work for us, and that's TNA. But that again, as I'm saying, it seems like that ship has sailed and that hasn't worked out because they're on Thursday nights, not opposing AEW.
And they're all on Sunday. So there you have the triple threat that it's going down. All right, that was Brandon's first question. Second one, his follow-up here.
Absolutely, yes. I think that's a great question, and I'm glad you brought it up. I do think there's a lot of interest in...
Here, let's
pause that. Let me introduce it because we don't have the audio of me asking the question. I asked him with MyAEW, and you have all these independent wrestling companies that are partners now. Could you see something like, maybe it's AEW Revolution with WrestleMania not happening in the United States? Could you see a big pay-per-view weekend where maybe you have all these independent wrestling companies run shows and alongside a big AEW pay-per-view. And then MyAEW is the broadcaster or distributor of those shows. Is that something you could see happening?
Having a number of these promotions come and promote around an AEW event. And to your point, Brandon, I do expect some things like that, even potentially around All In. I think there's going to be a lot of great events around All In. I know there'll be a lot of events in England, and I know promoters have reached out about putting their events on MyAEW to grow their viewership and collaborate in anticipation of what's going to be, I think, the biggest night in wrestling this year, and certainly is going to be a huge event and the most attended wrestling show in England. And it should be a really special night in London. I know there's a lot of interest there, but certainly in America, I think something like that could work very well too. And I know there are a lot of promoters that would be interested in something like that next year and in future years. And obviously there's potential for an opportunity next year, to your point. So I think that's a great thought, and that is something I am very interested in. So I'm glad you asked.
It was a great question because I thought you got pretty much a confirmation of the fact that, he's looking at doing multiple events housed on MyAEW in the lead into All In London. I know RevPro is doing a big show the day before. Now they do have their own on-demand service, but that's one that comes to mind. But it also sounds like this is not an if for doing this big show next year at some time WrestleMania season. It sounds like he is going to do this show and very much try to bring all the independents to a location, and MyAEW is going to fill the vacuum created by Triller TV and I think this is where he sees more of the function of MyAEW when it comes to outside promotions, is live events and driving people to shows that are, on the radar of people rather than maybe investing in libraries. And it sounds like, Triller has left a big opening, and Tony Khan is aggressively going to try and fill that hole. But I think you could take a lot from that this is what they are planning to do and make MyAEW this need. If you're a hardcore wrestling fan or even a casual fan, that you are going to, this is going to be your hub for all of this wrestling around the world.
And credit to the NWA guys for having me on their podcast and putting that idea in my head. I don't think I would have thought of it if we hadn't discussed it this past weekend. But yeah, it's basically having the WrestleMania week experience, where instead of WWE just running its shows, and these other companies are piggybacking off it, that AEW would actually be sort of the facilitator, or really the distributor of that content, rather than these sort of random third parties, whatever they might be. But it's been Fight the last several years, but in the past it's been WWN Live or something like that. So why not? From a business, let's get as much as we get our hands on as much of the money as we can, rather than maybe in some cases WWE's try to shut people out. I don't know. But let's try to actually facilitate it. And I think there's for the wrestling fan, for the hardcore wrestling fan, which is certainly where AEW's audience leans towards, it's a great branding message to be able to say, hey, yeah, AEW is great and we're the best and all this, but there's also these other great promotions, and we're living in the wrestling universe, whereas WWE tries to live in this universe where it's the only wrestling company that exists. Yeah, I'm surprised that I was able to ask not one but two questions. They prompted me to ask a second question. Despite I have filed an intervention. I'm conducting an intervention to try.
You're staging an intervention with AEW Legal.
I'm staging an intervention to try to get 3 of Ryan Nemeth's contracts unsealed that are exhibits in a petition. It's not quite a lawsuit, but so AEW's gone back to the federal court and said, hey, we're in this argument with Ryan Nemeth about what state we should be doing arbitration in. over his old lawsuit that we're still litigating, that we're supposed to be litigating in arbitration. And there's some sort of disagreement about whether arbitration should happen in California. We discussed this last week, or whether it should happen in Florida. And so they filed as exhibits these 3 contracts of Ryan Nemeth to say to the court, hey, look at what his contract says. It's got to be in Florida. So I'm saying, all right, let's see those contracts then, not just the parts of it that you want the court and the public to, well, not the court, but the public to see. So we'll see how that goes.
All right. Beyond that, those were, I think, all the key things that were brought up. The last question I would ask about like MyAEW, and as people are going to start to talk about the idea of doing like a big event surrounded by indie events, like certainly the biggest statement to that would be landing a Game Changer Wrestling, which seems like it's going to be the most lucrative of the free agents out there. I guess the question is, they had enough of a deal with Triller to abandon its pay-per-view system to go to streaming. I'm sure it was we know it was a lucrative deal for GCW. And they're in one sense, it's like they don't have a whole lot of options if Triller is not able to come out of this and be able to honor their deal. But for GCW at the same time, like you don't have a whole lot of leverage. Are you going to get a comparable deal from a MyAEW, or you risk going it alone or finding a new distributor that, they're in the most precarious position, but certainly I could see like a MyAEW, you want to establish your Mania week, and that would be the place to get it.
Yeah, I would hope that they're having conversations about that.
And if this is anywhere near the figure as David Bixenspan is sharing at $100,000 a month, yeah, they are not going to find that deal anywhere else. But Triller,
right? Because they were basically getting a rights fee, and I don't think MyAEW is going to give them anything but a revenue share. So, just to update us, to give us a quick status update on the Flips Media, that is think of it as the Fight versus the Triller lawsuit that is set for a hearing on July 2nd. So kind of as expected, the Triller side does not appear to have engaged with this at all, and they're going to let it go to default, as they've let some other lawsuits they're involved in go to default. So maybe the executives who are in charge of Triller TV /Fight/Flips Media will be able to get enough independence to salvage the company, but we'll see.
All right, let's continue on, because there were a few interviews this week, including Chris Van Vliet sitting down with Paul Heyman, and maybe someone in our comment section should be here to read the transcript, but instead we do have some clips. So first, we're going to hear from Paul Heyman about the current WWE creative situation, or should we say content situation.
Paul Levesque is not the chief creative officer in WWE. He's the chief content officer. And that designation, I think, is the tell-all moment as to his approach to the responsibility and accountabilities that go with the job. Technology rules the algorithm, and the algorithm dictates creativity. The distribution of our content is determined by the algorithm. So it can be the most creative and the most innovative booking you've ever seen, but if it doesn't feed the algorithm, no one's going to see it. So then it's not efficient. It's not profitable. There are so many masters to serve, one of them being the algorithm, the other being the distributors. You have to please Netflix. You have to please NBCU. You have to please Disney/ESPN. You have to please the purchasing audience. You have to please the talent.
That was Paul Heyman. Notice the last ones in the pyramid there were fans and talent. That's the
right.
bottom.
That is the hierarchy. That's the order that they go in. I would put fans on the maybe a little lower than the talent, but yes.
Yeah, there's Paul Heyman's the Paul Heyman doctrine as well. if you wanted a soundbite that is going to just anger your fan base even more, it's that we are slaves to the algorithm. That is what our content, not creative, our content is grinded towards, the algorithm. What is going to generate?
Is there truth to that though? Do you watch WWE and think, oh, they're booking for the algorithm of social media?
I think it's one of those things that it's not necessarily one is separate from the other. Like naturally, like I think that you are inherently something that is, well received by your audience, you would see as having, a popularity among it. Like I am sure that they very much are catering a lot of their stories and such of like what are, certain designations that are going to circulate this, what is going to be great in clip form, what is going to be great for social. Like I'm sure all of that is going in there. I don't think you necessarily have to sacrifice quality for something that's going to be popular. But just the way it is designed, it tells you that it's almost like the life of this creative process is very minimal. Like this is a very binary process of how we deliver these stories and are computerized essentially.
And if they didn't, what does that mean though? So
I can't tell you what this means.
Like what happened on this past Monday Night Raw that was done in a certain way to feed the algorithm?
Well, based on their YouTube history,
I want Rewind to Raw to have like an analysis bucket where you say, oh, this was for the algorithm, and this part was maybe not, but yes.
Yeah, from my analysis of WWE's big hits on YouTube, it is Braun Strowman tipping cars, it's Eva Marie losing her top, it's Undertaker clips, it's Goldberg clips. That feeds the algorithm. Intergender matches, look at some of the, like, your Beyond Wrestlings. Go look at the most watched stuff. There's a reason they do intergender matches in such high volume, especially in latter or past years. That stuff would always perform the highest on these independent YouTube channels.
I think
so more intergender matches in WWE. That's what I'm arguing for the algorithm.
But what happens on YouTube, at least, and YouTube is something that I put in every single TV show report. What usually, it's kind of a split, right? Like what usually performs best for WWE shows from a given TV show, they're clips of the show, which, as it turns out, are probably written to their contracts exactly how much they can publish. But what usually does best is either whatever the big angle was with the big stars, naturally, or sometimes it's both of these things, or it's that and the full segment or the full matches that they're probably contractually able to post. So I don't see it as like, oh, that's something that's particularly TikTok like or particularly gaming the algorithm. But it sounds good, I guess.
It was interesting because I listened to this interview. I listened to Paul Levesque with Stephen A. Smith, and I heard most of Cody Rhodes' interview with Ariel Helwani. And the similarities that come out, and maybe this all could be coincidental, but few things are. It's like there was this emphasis on, it's so hard. This is such a hard job. We're serving so many masters. We have Netflix. We have ESPN. We have the USA Network. I was like, I don't doubt this is a challenging job. These are billion-dollar contracts. Like, you are being compensated handsomely to provide this content that you self-professed are the masters of doing. You are making incredible amounts of... Yeah, it's hard. It's like the Nick Khan line. Yeah, it's busy. Yeah, aren't we all busy? Tired. Yeah. I have not found a job where I'm not busy. I'm not tired. To find me that job, I would love to take it. It's like, you guys are getting paid ridiculous sums. It's a hard job, but it's not an impossible job. It is not an impossible job, and you have entered. This is the game. This is the rule set that you have so chosen to play by and are being compensated for. So, my sympathies aside, but we missed the answer. Okay, why is this job so few can do it? In fact, according to Paul Heyman, only one man can do it.
Paul Levesque is the best person for that job. He's a collaborator. He pivots. He understands. And he understands that what works today may not work tomorrow, and what works tomorrow may not work in 2 days. He's brilliant at taking a look at the landscape and understanding, does this make sense? Is it logical? Does the storyline work? Will it create box office and interest and intrigue? Does it work for the characters involved? Does it progress the characters involved and take them from being characters on a television show into becoming attractions? We're how many years now into the Paul Levesque reign? It's a matter of serving all of these content needs on a creative basis. And he's doing it better now than he did just a couple of years ago. And the collaborative effort with him is even better now than it was then. So you give me a few $1 billion and say, start a wrestling company. I'm hiring him for the job.
All right. There was a lot there. Even better now. Paul Heyman, Paul Levesque, the two Pauls.
I mean, like in terms of business metrics, we'll investigate to what degree we can, whether it's better now.
Okay. Well, that's if Paul Heyman strikes gold, he's hiring Paul Levesque, number one. I think in the past he said he would hire Stephanie McMahon first. So I don't know.
Has he? Did he say that?
He has said he would hire Stephanie McMahon. He said
he has experience working with her side by side, so he would know.
That's true. So, yeah, I do look forward to this interview being revisited in 10 years by David Bixenspan and Chris Sellner. All right, let's finish off with one more clip, just for everyone to remind. I know that we're deep into the show here, and let's all remember why we're here.
I think that people lose perspective of sometimes is we're just fun, man. We're fun, and sometimes people take it too seriously. Sometimes people get too caught up in it, but it's there to entertain, man. If you want to, there's a lot of stuff going on in the world. If you just want to turn off for a couple of hours and tune into something cool that you can just lose yourself in and have a good time, WWE is a place to do it. And if you've never seen it live, I'm telling you, come to a live event, come to one of our PLEs, come to a TV. There's nothing like it in entertainment.
That's what we do.
Okay. That was Paul Levesque with Stephen A. Smith. And credit to Stephen A. Smith, who did disclose a former client of Nick Khan. Yes.
He's a journalist.
Yeah. He raved. He's the best. He's the best.
Made him a lot of money, I bet.
Probably fortunes. Wheel of fortunes that Nick Khan brought him. Okay. You've got some graphs, some charts. What can you tell us? What does this mean? What does this mean for our company of let's
where do we want to start? What question beckons us the most? Let's discuss whether it really is better now than it's than it even was before, because we had some TV ratings analysis on X, formerly known as Twitter, from one Adam, what's his last name? Adam
Scher. This is Braun Strowman.
Adam Scher, of the USA Network fame, who apparently responding to Cody Rhodes' comments to Ariel Helwani, where Cody said that he believes there's no one better at booking W shows than Triple H, and Braun Strowman chimed in and said, "Ratings say otherwise, LOL." So, what's the state of WWE ratings? Is Braun Strowman correct that ratings are not doing well? Are they down?
Do you think Braun is a big panel plus data guy?
I bet he's a panel only truther. So let's take a look at SmackDown first. So I like these charts that I have here if you're watching the video where we show the current year laid right over top seasonally with the prior year. And this is total viewership. I would bust out the demo, but the demo is even worse for everybody. So let's look at total viewership. It's a little more generous to everybody. And it's down. SmackDown ratings are down. It's on the USA Network this year. It was on the USA Network last year. It's down 17%. Is cord cutting down, is cord cutting 17%? It's probably not quite 17%. So that's not encouraging, I guess. All right, how's Raw doing? Raw, of course, is on Netflix, and we've got the Netflix first-party data here, and we're looking at this year versus last year. And what's the difference? Well, last year is really skewed, isn't it, by that humongous debut episode, and it really is kind of skewed by this unusually high second episode too. I think I think there's a fair argument to say, all right, let's exclude the first 2 episodes of 2025 and do that comparison. If you do that comparison that way, it's about even. You got a 4% difference. Now maybe Netflix is gaming this. I don't know. It's first party data. It's not third party data. Give me the video amp data. I don't know, but it's plus 4%. This year versus last year. And I looked at this, line and I said, this blue line is really 4% higher on average than the pink line, even if you exclude these two. But I did go in and do the math individually, and it seems to check out. It's roughly even, right? Okay. Now,
did
NXT,
you take into effect the May 2025 effect that SmackDown went under? Because that was the release of Braun Strowman.
I mean, you can look at May, and it is down, but it's sort of the post WrestleMania lull, so it was down in the prior year.
Or was it the post Braun Strowman lull?
No, it was. You have a similar. We can look back at 2024 too, and there's a post WrestleMania lull, I think you could say. Now NXT also down about 17%, the same as SmackDown actually, right? So not great. Is it horrible? No, I mean SmackDown ranked number 1 last Friday on cable in the demo, so they're providing still exceptional value, even if their ratings are down from last year. So no reason to pull the fire alarm and say, oh my God. But I think they're coming off of a peak, right? I mean, you have the Attitude Era and the Hogan Era go into a category of their own, but this was certainly a peak that we lived through in 2023 to 2025 or so. Even
better now.
If I may. Okay. So let's discuss the other thing I prepared here is, let's look at live events, I guess. Let's look at live events as well. Do I have what slide do I want to look at for that? So I think the most informative, we're telling stories here, LaGreca. The most informative story to tell here for ticket sales, I think, is, so we have the WrestleTix data, and to look at this market to market, let's say, so we're looking at a given Raw or a given SmackDown in a given city compared to the same city where it had a Raw or a SmackDown. Even there's no Raw or SmackDown cross contamination here. This is all the same stuff, totally even, right? But it could be like multiple years ago, or it could be just a year ago. It's all over the place, right? So anyway, in Q2, I updated this for today. In Q2, we've got 17 negative stories in Q2. We got 5 positive stories for WWE. And, you can go back in time, there were fewer negative stories and there were a majority positive stories, and we've got a majority negative stories. But, you could say, well, that's, of course, attendance is down. This is WrestleTix, estimated tickets distributed. But what about, actual ticket prices? And real quick, by the way, attendance for SmackDown has been about even. They're still doing quite well. They're doing like 10,000 tickets distributed for every SmackDown, even better for Raw. But the other thing I want to look at is, so we know the ticket prices are through the roof. Everyone's complaining about ticket prices and how high they've gotten, which they have gotten a lot higher. So what I did here is, now we've got Polestar data. These are not estimates. These are real numbers from Polestar, and Polestar gives us the actual number of tickets sold. It gives us the actual gross, the actual amount of money that was generated from those ticket sales. And the question I've asked here is, all right, I've got a Raw in Cleveland. What was the average ticket price of, based on the sale? You got the number of tickets sold, I got the the gross, I just divide it. And this is the average ticket sold price. So say you got a Raw in Cleveland. I've asked, all right, the last time they had Raw in Cleveland, was the average ticket sold price up or down? Mm-hmm. And what we see here this is a chart showing from the beginning of 2023 all the way to the present. And it's green if the price went up, it's red if the price went down. And we've got almost all.
Wait a minute. When did this merger take place?
This merger, for people watching in video, this merger took place. This merger was finalized in September 2023, right about here, right? And we see this great era of ticket price increases, I call it. The era of ticket price increases, which went from about WrestleMania 2024 through about SummerSlam 2025, where you had an almost uninterrupted, perfect streak of ticket prices just going up and up and up across markets. Mark Shapiro must have just been really enjoying himself, really proud of his live events team.
A unified platform, more personalization.
So you could say, look, now we know that there's some bumpiness in the attendance, particularly of SmackDown, I guess. And like I said, we're getting some market-to-market comparisons now that are majority not positive stories. But is it all being offset by these enormously increased ticket prices, which have started to level out here, right? We see some red here closer to the present, which we did not see between. So what I did here was I said, all right, we've got the same chart that's in this here, it's at the top, and we've got two other charts to say what's the ticket sales, what's the difference in number of tickets sold in this market for this type compared to the last time we were in this market for this event type. And, we get more of a mixed story. It's mostly green. It's mostly green across this timeline going back to the beginning of 2023. It gets a little bit red. It gets more frequently red the closer we get to the present. And now the real question I think we want to know, though, is, are the increase in ticket prices, even though attendance is down sometimes, is the increase in ticket prices offsetting the moderate decrease in attendance? And the answer to that is yes, sort of, just like all exciting answers are, right? We do see a little bit of red towards the last, and I should be really clear. This is Polestar data, so we don't have everything. We have there's like across this 2-3 year period here, we've got something like 179 events. So it's a lot of events. It's a sample though, right? It is by no means exhaustive. So, and it's, as far as I know, random. I can't tell why we get some events and not others. But we do get some. Are the gates down? Is the question. And we do see in the present here, some gates are down, some gates are up so far in 2026. I haven't counted them. It looks like about half. Half are up, half are down.
I think that's a central question. Is that I think the thinking over this last 6 months is yes, they are volume-wise less people, not falling off a cliff, but down slightly. But that's being offset by these prices. That okay, fewer people, but we're extracting more from them. But now we are seeing some of these examples here, which is at least it's minimal, but something to watch. And I think they would price accordingly as well if they see this and having the ability to adjust that. But I think it's quite a stretch to state that, things are, business at least is better than ever. I think everyone saw like there was a 2024, 2025 peak that they enjoyed. And maybe some of that could have been realized in 2025, but in your back pocket, you had this John Cena retirement that, especially towards the last few months, really kicked into gear and was able to at least camouflage some of what was going to be, a decline at some point, which is what inevitably is going to happen. And you are seeing them reacting this year. There is certainly an emphasis on younger talent that they are trying to build up because, as they've said, these are performers that have been on top in these big positions for several years at this point. In the case of Roman Reigns, we're going over a decade now where this guy has been in this position as well. And now is the time to be trying to cultivate that next generation of stars.
Yeah. Almost 10 years. I guess I've got the last, I think it's 12 events to look at, in detail here. So I guess like the story that you don't want is, yeah, we increase ticket prices. Sure, attendance is down, but gate is at least even. So what you don't want is higher ticket prices, but lower gate, right? Like that's sort of, right. We're really pressing people to pay more and we're making less money. So do we have any cases like that recently? And the answer is we've got at least one. We've got Omaha, the beginning of May, which is the newest data point we've got here, where ticket sales were down. So this is from a year ago, right? They in some cases they end up doing things almost 1 year to the date. So they did a Raw in Omaha with my friends from Omaha, from the whatever that.
Oh yeah. The
who I had to argue with about handing over their venue contract. I don't know if we ever did any reporting on that, but so anyway, they had Raw in Omaha on May 4th this year. They had a Raw in Omaha on May 5th. So ticket sales were down 22%, and the gate was single digits, not terrible, right? It was down 4%. It was an $846,000 gate compared to last time an $882,000 gate. So it's down 4%. It's about flat, but they raised ticket prices by about a quarter, about 0.4%. The other stories we have is, ticket sales are down, but ticket prices are up 88% in Tulsa from 2 years ago. But we jacked the gate up 5%. Okay. Fort Worth, the ticket sales were down
8%, dude. That's just like
it had been a while. We hadn't been there in a while since the new era. Okay.
Tulsa.
So we got in Fort Worth. Well, ticket sales were down 14%. The gate was down 28%, and actually ticket prices were down. This is one of the cases where we do have a lower ticket price. This is from a year ago, where they were in Fort Worth a year ago at almost the same time for a SmackDown. Then we've got Sacramento for a Raw, where they were there on April 13th, returning after, what is that, like a little over 6 months when they were there in October. And ticket sales were up. We like Sacramento. A $1.5 million gate. 24% better than last time, and we only had to jack up ticket prices by 10% because we did better in terms of ticket sales. Boston is way down, and this is where you can say, well, that was John. We're comparing this to John Cena's last Boston Raw. I don't know if we need to keep going on here, but we can do Phoenix here. Phoenix, where they were in Phoenix for a SmackDown in March. They had last been in Phoenix for a SmackDown in January of 2025. So a little over a year. Ticket sales were down 16%. Gate was down 26%, but ticket prices were down. So not the vector of bad stories that Omaha is. And do we have any others that are quite like that, that are like Omaha in terms of...
Sorry, one of the Seattle, Washington average ticket price increased 130% from last time.
Well, they hadn't done a Raw there since 2023, since before the TKO merger.
Great. They won't be able to afford to attend another Raw till the next merger.
This was 7 days after Ari Emanuel and Vince McMahon shook hands. They did a Raw in Seattle. They probably have done a SmackDown, but you're not going to get me with that. Oh, but it's Friday, Monday. No, these are the same. These are the same night, same weekday. This is Raw versus Raw. So they had not been in Seattle for a Raw since April of 2023. They returned in March of 2026. And yeah, ticket prices were more than double. It's the new world.
We have had to adjust to world economic pressures. Are you aware of the Strait of Hormuz being closed? It has affected our purchasing power, and thus it has fallen to our fan base, which is at the bottom, 130% here in Seattle. Amazing.
And I guess Atlanta is this slightly, this is kind of single digits, though. But we could really say London, right? London ticket sales were down 31%.
$250 is the average ticket price for London SmackDown.
This is London SmackDown in January compared to London SmackDown in March of 2025. Ticket prices were up. This is in US dollars, of course. I've converted it, or Polestar has converted it for me. Ticket prices were up 12%. Ticket sales were down 31%. And the gate was down. So we're charging people more. We're selling less, but we're ending up with, wow, a $2 million gate, which is great. It's, but it's not a $2.8 million gate. So I guess you could tolerate some of that. But if there's more of these, then, you're kind of gouging people for not a greater return, maybe. But that's not where we're at, but we're seeing some cases of that, I guess.
And also this week, they did back-to-back nights in London with Raw and SmackDown.
Yeah. We don't have that data, but yeah.
Yeah, not yet, but it'd be interesting to see what the pricing is when it was back-to-back nights that they were charging for. Very insightful stuff to look at and kind of see where things are, because that is the big question. Is like,
what about AEW? We haven't done AEW. People are going to, there'll be comments if we don't do AEW. Yeah. Where's AEW?
What are you trying to hide?
Yeah. What is it? Tony Khan said you're a great economist. Well, yeah, because you're not covering them. No, okay.
What's economist code for?
So Dynamite is up 2% in total viewership. And this is kind of a fair distribution comp now, right? Because we're looking at 26 versus 25, and 25 is the Max era. So that's the same distribution. Nielsen's been all over the place, but for all these wrestling programs, it's been all over the place, right? Except for maybe NXT, but the other two, yes. So it's up 2%, essentially flat. How's Collision? Collision's up 12%, and we're excluding all preemptions here. So we're just, because it's preempted a lot. Look at all these squares. This is preemptions. It's up 12%. Pretty good, right? Again, excluding preemptions, which excludes all these crazy cases where they've got like amazing sports lead-ins and stuff. Although there might be like one or two where they did sneak in a lead-in on their normal time slot. That's ratings. That tells you what? That's a slightly positive story on your main show and a pretty positive story on your secondary show. Attendance, so let's look at Dynamite. Is it over here? Where is it? So let's look at Collision. Collision is kind of flat over the last year or so. Dynamite is flattening out, I would say, after a long decline since the return to touring. In terms of market-to-market comps, we've still got a majority of negative stories here. 10 negative stories in this quarter to 3 positive stories. And it's been more even than that. Again, these could be quite old comparisons. I don't have it broken out. And I also did this sort of moving 365-day average for all of the shows. I grouped together Collision and Rampage because they are, one is essentially the predecessor of the other. And it's a slow, long decline for Dynamite still. And I was surprised to see this big arc for SmackDown. Mm-hmm. Which I guess it was consistent with that, right? With the quarterly averages. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was going to say, like, I think that it was, it's coincided with, the company's popularity, but I think, like, you looked at those Friday shows.
Raw's just marching on. Raw marching on with a positive incline here.
That's the, I don't know, the Obafemi effect. But, yeah, it's very clear that I think, and you've said this before, that I feel for a lot of the AEW fan base, it's like the pay-per-views are the clear priority programming, both for pay-per-view, for attendance, and when AEW comes to your town, like they may have the hottest wrestling, you're going to have an incredible show to watch, but like, as Wednesday being an example, they loaded up this show last night in Rio Rancho, New Mexico, didn't really mean a thing for any kind of like walk up or spiking a number in the last couple of days with this big lineup and such. It's a product that it's for whatever buzz you assign to AEW, it does feel it's more towards like the pay-per-views. The TVs are sort of, they're well received, but of people like actually when AEW comes to town and just going to watch TV, it has not translated to, a spike in television audiences.
Yeah. I mean, this continues, I guess, the narrative as data analysis hazards to do, right? This reinforces the narrative that I think we've discussed and that I've espoused, is that this has been since, after WrestleMania of 2025 last year, there's been sort of a flattening out or a slight a decline back to prior states of fan interest for WWE, and there's been the end of this decline the end of a long decline for AEW. It's maybe ticking back up in some ways. And I think it does speak to, businesses among competitors, including in wrestling, are not necessarily a zero-sum game. But in this case, it kind of is, right? Like when we've seen this both in AEW's peak when it first launched and when it got CM Punk, and when things went in the other direction, when WWE got free of Vince McMahon and AEW had problems. We saw these go in opposite directions, and we're seeing this again as we're coming out of this peak for WWE.
So what if Vince McMahon buys TNA?
That's a good idea. He was asked that a number of years ago, and he said, maybe.
I'm sure he could, maybe $40 million will be allocated elsewhere. All right, the final thing. We're going to play a game called Is This Off the Record? And this example comes from Diana Rossini, who had previously been at the Athletic.
Catch us up on Diana Rossini.
You either are aware of this story or not, but Diana Rossini had to, leave the Athletic as their senior NFL insider after photos emerged of her at a private resort with New England Patriots coach Mike Vrabel, and they denied that there was anything to these photos. They were out of context. They turned out not to be out of context. There were more photos that surfaced. And so the New York Times, which owns The Athletic, did the ultimate investigation into themselves about the ethics or lack thereof that were displayed by Diana Rossini. And in doing so, they reached out to Diana Rossini, and we got this paragraph in this very lengthy New York Times story. In early May, the Times began reporting this article. Ms. Rossini responded to a reporter's request for an interview via text message. She cited the, quote, intense scrutiny and personal attacks that she has faced, saying this has had a significant impact on my life, both professionally and personally. At the end of the message, referring to herself as a former journalist, Ms. Rossini asked the reporter not to quote from the text, which begs the question why you are responding to a reporter's questions. The interaction demonstrated a different approach to journalism from the way that it is conducted in traditional newsrooms, which is about the nicest way of saying this was total bullshit. When the reporter told her that this article would include portions of her text message because no agreement had been made for them to engage in an off-the-record correspondence, Ms. Rossini objected and then emailed Mr. Perpich, the publisher of The Athletic, as well as two senior editors at the Times, to reiterate her wish that her comments not be included. Spoiler, they were included, as I am reading this from the published piece. Brandon, if there is a guarantee in life, death, taxes, and an inability to people to know what is on the record and off the record, I mean, those are the three pillars I will live and die by. Even this reporter, like, this is an amazing.
She described herself as a former journalist. They got in there. I would say it's different in every situation with every person you may talk to. I think I have definitely told people, other reporters, who, like, you already trust or know what they're going to do. This is not somebody who's approached me and said, I'm working on a story and I need information from you. But I'll say something like, this is off the record because I don't want you to put this in your publication. And they would have the right to say no, but that's not what happens. We could get into a whole long discussion about what background is too. And I think all these things are different in almost every situation. But clear communication and adult communication is always most important and helpful. Like, I remember you sharing with me the one Ariel Helwani clip where he was saying that he basically explained as everything starts off the record and then you get permission to put things on the record, which is kind of the opposite of the old newspaper way of doing things where, like, you are assumed as on the record. It just depends on, I think, who you're talking to.
Yeah, I mean, the general principle is like, at its core, off the record, it's a mutual agreement that you are making. It is not like I can just tell
contract.
I cannot just tell Brandon whatever I want, and then at the end, oh, by the way, that's all off the record. Now, me as the reporter, like, I might am I going to hold this person to that? Am I going to damage this relationship because of this? I would be in the right to include whatever I am told. It's for me to then decide at the end, but it is not a given that you are going to be granted off the record when we have not agreed to that. That's a very simple way of looking at it.
Yeah. And I've had even very experienced reporters who are not wrestling reporters sort of preface, don't quote me on this, but because kind of already know. And when to the extent I talk to people who are in the business, that's where I would more so lean towards. And I think it's become more sensitive in this sort of online social media era where I more lean towards, and will even explicitly tell people that everything we discuss is off the record unless we discuss otherwise.
Yes, there's generally a significant amount of paranoia that you will encounter. But anyway, not the best of ways. But this is quite the rundown. This New York Times story. It's like a 30-minute read if you want to go through it. So anyway, there you go. That's our media literacy class for the week, and that's going to bring an end to the show. The slow news week that's clocking out at nearly an hour and a half. So there you have it. We almost had a guest today. Didn't need it. But nonetheless, we appreciate all of you for joining us. We will be back next Thursday night, 8:30 p.m. Eastern time. We'll get Brandon's rundown of Slammiversary. Maybe he'll tune in for the NXT pre-show barbecue outside in the Performance Center parking lot. All that to look forward to. So
we won't be doing any of that. We could review some WNBA games. That's what's often on my TV. Not that I pay very close attention to that either, but we could discuss Alyssa Thomas's fist to the neck of Caitlin Clark.
Maybe we'll do a book report next week. Maybe we'll talk about the book that you and I are in the midst of reading. We could.
I have listened to that book.
Okay, I am physically reading it
by
Jody Cantor and Megan Toohey. Yes. All right, everybody. Have a good week. We'll talk to you next week.